Israel's military now says the ground offensive is in the heart of Khan Yunis in southern Gaza. And a key UN agency is saying again that there's nowhere safe for Palestinian civilians to go.
In the current context of the so-called safe zones, they are not scientific, they are not rational, they are not possible. And I think the authorities are aware of this. I think it's callous, I think it's cold, and I think it reinforces the indifference towards children and women in Gaza. And I've seen in hospitals from the south to the north that indifference is lethal. It's heartbreaking and it's confounding.
That is the spokesperson for UNICEF using some of his strongest language yet. And this is new video into us this morning from Khan Yunis, the streets in the city where tens of thousands have gone to escape the fighting now look to be emptied out. And we have been seeing video of civilians heading further south. The UN says 600,000 people in Gaza are being told now to clear out of areas targeted by Israel's military. Many of them had already fled the fighting in the north. And this is new video into us this morning from Israel's military, showing ground forces inside Gaza. It doesn't say where or when this video was recorded. The Israeli military is describing the fighting as the most intense on the ground so far. We begin with senior international correspondent Margaret Evans, who is live in Jerusalem this hour. Margaret, this war is approaching the 2-month mark. Israel's Prime Minister is making new and forceful remarks about the ground offensive. What is Benjamin Netanyahu now saying?
That's right, Heather. Last night he gave a press conference, late last night, our time, with his war cabinet, basically saying that Israeli defense forces had made Gaza City and Jabalia in the north shake, the ground shake, and that now they were making the ground shake in Khan Yunis. And certainly that's what we're seeing, especially since yesterday, late yesterday. We've been seeing images that people have captured on their cell phones of ground fighting around Khan Yunis, a place called Deir al-Balah. Ambulance crews trying to reach injured there after an airstrike, turning back because you could hear heavy gunfire in the distance. Of course, Israel said yesterday that its tanks were moving towards Khan Yunis. The ground offensive had begun in southern Gaza. Today, they're using the term in the heart of the city. They say Israeli soldiers are in the heart of Khan Yunis and that they're fighting house to house. Benjamin Netanyahu, in a very strong and aggressive speech yesterday, said there is no part of the Gaza Strip that Israeli forces are incapable of reaching. The reason they're going after Khan Yunis, they say, is because they believe that the senior leaders of Hamas are hiding in or around the city. People like Yahya Sinwar, the political head, someone who is associated with those October 7th attacks. They say that's why they're targeting Khan Yunis. But of course, people on the ground are paying a very heavy price. Security experts say that that the Israelis have killed, by their own estimation, about 5,000 Hamas fighters out of potentially 30,000 fighters. So it gives you a sense of what the battle is looking like. And of course, you have increasingly people sounding the alarm bells about the rising number of civilians who are being killed in this conflict.
Warnings, Margaret, of the humanitarian crisis that is unfolding inside inside Gaza, rather. They are growing more dire day by day as the situation deteriorates day by day. What are the latest warnings we're getting this morning?
Well, I mean, as you were referring to, I mean, the aid agencies seem to be increasingly frustrated because they are saying this is, one aid agency yesterday said this is the darkest moment for humanity in terms of humanitarian suffering. And we saw overnight a couple of airstrikes where you just saw people going through the rubble, pulling body after body out of the rubble. And then, of course, as I was saying earlier, earlier, the ambulances are having trouble reaching them, getting them back to the hospitals. They say they're overwhelmed. You see pictures of people injured, tied up to IV lines, just lying on the ground, which is slick with blood. They say they can't handle the numbers that are being brought to them. The Gaza media office in Hamas says that the number of people killed in Gaza is more than 16,000. They say 7,000 of them are children. And of course, they say they don't know where to go. We have seen lots of images this morning of people piling, the mattresses they've had, the kind of the makeshift tents that they've had, having moved from the north already, trying to put them on donkey carts in cars, some people moving on foot, because they're really panicked about the level of this kind of fighting. There are those who say this is going to put pressure on the Israelis to agree to some kind of ceasefire, potentially a pause. They say they're allowing, pauses of about 4 hours a day for people to move. Aid agencies say that it's simply not enough. One other thing I should point out, another pressure on the Israeli government in terms of people advocating for a pause, are the families of the hostages still in Gaza. They had a very testy meeting yesterday with the war cabinet. They said they felt they were treated disrespectfully. They don't feel that their concerns are being heard. It wasn't just the families of the hostages, it was also some of the hostages who've been released who say, we were held in tunnels, we could hear the bombing, you're putting the hostages still there at risk. So that's another pressure on the Israeli government. But I'd have to say right now, there is no indication, certainly not from the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, that they are prepared to stop this. They say they are determined to cut the head off of Hamas and make sure that it can't threaten Israel again. Of course, the aid agencies are saying at what price?